Well, hi. You asked me to tell you what the differences between Balanchine and Robbins as choreographers and working with them, as I was so fortunate to do. But just a little background. Before I joined New York City Ballet, I already was a professional dancer. My first big thing, was when I was 11 on television. And Tony Sharmely was the choreographer. And then years later, when I was 18, I went to work for him again. And in those years, he was the foremost TV choreographer. But even before that, let's see, I worked with Eugene Loring, the choreographer of Billy the Kid, when I was a teenager. And I worked for Hermes Pan, who was Fred Astaire's choreographer. And I worked for Anton Dolan. And I had been in a ballet company. So by the time I joined New York City Ballet, I was pretty much of a professional. I had actually made my living dancing for a year. And also, I knew what choreographers wanted, and that was somebody that could learn fast. That's really one of the best things you can do if you're a dancer for choreographers, learn fast. And so I also had choreographed in Los Angeles and other places, and then Balanchine, as you know, brought me back to City Ballet as a choreographer. So I was keenly interested in how Balanchine choreographed, and then later when Jerry joined, how Jerry choreographed. So first, Balanchine. As I told you before, he did all of his own piano reductions, so he really knew the score. And he knew the dancers because he taught us every day in class. So he knew our personalities, he knew what we could do, what we couldn't do, how far he could push us, and he, as Allegra Kent and everybody has said in other videos, he made us better dancers. He didn't just exploit us or use what we could do, he really developed dancers. So when Balanchine walked into a room, he knew the music thoroughly, and he knew us thoroughly, and he just started to dance, and we copied him. And it was very simple, and he was like Mozart in that he just seemed to do it right the first time. You know the story of Mozart, that he just would write everything down with no corrections, and it was perfect the first go. Well, it was like that with Balanchine. He would just start moving and dancing and saying, do this here, do that there. If it was a classical ballet, he'd use, classical terms, do piqué arabesque here, maybe do two ceases over there, And then if it was a core thing, boys, you do two counts later, and then girls, and he worked extremely fast. And he really never made any mistakes. And if he did, which is so rare, he would just incorporate it. It would kind of just work out. It's not like going back and having to redo it again. He just kind of kept going, and it just always worked out. I talk a lot about this in my book. I go into more detail in the book, of course. So I was really anxious and curious and happy when Jerome Robbins was going to make his comeback to the company with Dances at a Gathering. And at that point, I had been in the company a couple of years. I had done a couple of ballets, and I was very used to how Balanchine worked, which was very similar to the other choreographers, Tony Sharmely, Loring. They all kind of worked the same way. And Balanchine never collaborated with the dancers, which I've heard is popular today with choreographers. He didn't ask the dancers about steps or what would you like to do here, or maybe let's try something together. No, he just would do it, and we copied it. And if somebody made a mistake, or Suzanne Farrell happened to twirl out of it a beautiful way, he would say, oh, that's better, let's do that. But that was rare. He didn't ask for our opinions. He just, he knew that if we were uncomfortable, he would change it immediately. And Vila tells a lot of funny stories about that, because he was so quick that you really had to keep up, otherwise he would just change the step. And as Vila said in a couple of interviews, he was so musical and his vocabulary was so perfect, as Vila puts it, it was the best possible solution. Once you've danced a Balanchine ballet to a piece of music, there just doesn't seem to be any other possible way to do it. It's the only way to do it. It feels right, it's comfortable, and his personality was so great. Lots of jokes. So this is what we were used to when Jerry Robbins came back to the company, and Jerry is very different. And all the stories about how intense he is or was, and I was in the original cast of Dances at a Gathering, and I had seen West Side Story 23 times as a kid, the movie. So I was so happy that he chose me. There were only like 12 of us originally. Melissa, Allegra, Violette, Patty McBride, Kay Mazo, Sarah Leland, and Carol Sumner was an understudy from the beginning. And the boys that he originally chose, Jacques D'Amboise, Eddie Villela, Anthony Blum, John Prince, myself, Bobby Majorano. I think those were the only boys that were called. Jacques bowed out of it quickly, and so did Melissa Hayden. So it was just left the 10 of us, basically. And Jerry was very intense. He'd come in the room very prepared with steps he wanted us to try. And unlike Balanchine, who didn't even like understudies, Jerry would have all of us do the same steps. So all the boys would learn the same combination, and he would then pick parts of who did it more to his liking, and then we would try to copy that way. And the same thing with the ballerinas, which was very awkward. Melissa Hayden could be carried in a lift a certain way because she had a large rib cage. But when Kay Mazo tried to do the step, it didn't work, and Jerry would be very upset with Kay that she didn't make it work the same as Melissa. But they have different bodies, so it's not going to look the same. So it was a very uncomfortable feeling, and I go into it in more detail, and I'll go into it in more detail just speaking about Dance as a Gathering. But the difference between the way Balanchine and Robbins worked was night and day. One was very happy, calm, knew what he was doing, never a temper tantrum, never raised his voice, made us all feel very special. When he choreographed solos, it was on us, the individual dancer, not another 3 dancers all trying to copy the same thing and then decide at the last minute, like Jerry would do that. He would wait till the last minute to let you know what role you were dancing, which was, I thought it was kind of rude, quite frankly. Now, Jerry got very close to some non-dancers and a few dancers. Later in his life, he calmed down a lot, I know, because I worked with him in Paris, and he became much, more mellow. But when he came back to the company with Dances at a Gathering, he was very tense, extremely tense. And I tell you that Balanchine story about when I was sitting at O'Neill's, a restaurant bar across the street, after an all-day rehearsal with Robbins, and Balanchine came in and sat next to me, and I was pretty depressed, and Balanchine said, "Dear, what's wrong? Because if you're unhappy, we're all in trouble," that made me laugh, because I was always a very up personality, and I thought that was so cute of him to say that. And I didn't want to say anything about Robbins because Balanchine didn't like it when dancers were critical of other people or other dancers, or he always wanted a positive spirit around him. So I didn't want to say anything. But he kind of pressed. He said, "No, dear, tell me what's wrong." And so I finally said, "Well, Mr. B, we're trying to please Jerry. He just doesn't like anything we're doing, and it's really hard. And we're tired. And it's like, I know he's a great choreographer, and I'm very happy." And Madam said, No, it's good for you to work with him. Good." And I went, "No, I understand that. I'm honored that he chose me. I was like the youngest in the cast." And Balanchine said, "No, that's not why." He said, "Someday you be ballet master, you be director, and it's good for you to work with him because he will teach you how not to treat people." Boy, do I remember that. Thank you, Mr. B. He'll teach you how not to treat people. So I don't want to be too down on Jerry, but the environment in the room, at least in my years in the company, was always very tense. He was better with the girls. He didn't, although there were instances when he would snap and just really, the only word is bitchy, really sharp. And Balanchine never lost his temper. I mean, I saw him get upset once with a dancer who kind of deserved it, but it was a very quick thing. It was over in 2 seconds, and that was so rare for Balanchine. So the differences are stark, and I could go on and on, but I'm going to end this little chat with a clip of my Casablanca, because I did this big Casablanca ballet for Warner Brothers, which I talk about later. But I put everything I learned from Jerry and Balanchine into Casablanca, and Jerry was a master theater director. I mean, he's well known. I mean, he would be a Broadway doctor. He'd go in and fix up shows that weren't very good. So I learned a lot from Jerry. And of course, Balanchine was Balanchine, so I tried to learn as much as I could from him. So I threw that all in Casablanca. So you'll see little touches of this, touches of that. Um, I try not to copy anything, but as Stravinsky said when somebody asked him about stealing, he said, "You know, of course I steal because I love so much." I love that line from Stravinsky. I'm allowed to steal because I love so much. So I steal too. And here's a little bit of Casablanca, and I hope you enjoyed this chat, and I hope you got something out of it. See ya. Bye.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.